cleaning the throttle body is really kind of normal maintenance on a car. Even though there's not a time or mileage interval for doing it, it's something that we do want to consider doing maybe every 50 or so thousand miles. You may also have some symptoms with your car that could point to needing a throttle body cleaning. Things like a rough idle or even fault codes stored in the ECM pointing to needing to clean the throttle body are really not that uncommon. Now, on many vehicles that are drive-by-wire, the ECM can actually adapt the throttle body to compensate for dirt inside of it. Now, it can only do so much of that before it will trigger a fault, so keeping the throttle body clean is going to be important. In addition to that, it's not a bad idea after you clean it to go ahead and readapt it and erase that learned value in the ECM. Also, big thanks to WD-40. As you guys know, they've been a great partner of the channel, especially the Mark III build over the years. So thanks to them for supplying the cleaner and sponsoring this video. Now, I've seen other ways where people clean the throttle body by holding it open, spraying the cleaner inside while it's still attached to the intake manifold. I really don't like that method for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think it does a good enough job actually removing the dirt. Also, you're spraying that stuff right into the intake manifold and then probably right into the engine. Also, because we have drive-by-wire, we're not able to rotate the throttle body and hold it open. We would have to turn the key on and have some type of throttle depressor on the gas pedal in order to open it. And really quick, we're going to cover cleaning first, then we're going to talk about adaptation. The adaptation part does vary from vehicle to vehicle. Now, the tools you're going to need for this job are really going to depend on the vehicle you're working on. But what we're going to use for my vehicle is going to be a 7mm nut driver for the clamp, a 5mm Allen, and ball Allen. The ball will make it a little easier, an electric ratchet or regular ratchet, a green scrubby pad, an old toothbrush or a cheap new toothbrush, a torque wrench, an inspection mirror, because we're working with chemicals, some gloves and safety glasses, and we're going to be using the WD-40 Specialist fast-acting carburetor, throttle body, and parts cleaner. Also, not a bad idea to have some of these blue towels to clean up any mess that's made. Let's start with removing the boot that attaches to the throttle body. You can either use a flat blade screwdriver, or this particular clamp is a 7mm. Now, you don't want to undo the clamp all the way, just loosen it enough so that we can slide it down the boot. Next, we'll pull the boot off the throttle body, and then I like to just tuck it down below. From here, we can use our inspection mirror and look into the throttle body to see just how dirty it is. As you can see, there was a pretty good amount of crud inside of there, so we're gonna go ahead and remove it and clean it. First thing, let's disconnect the electrical connector. Remember, pull the tab, push it into the component, and then remove it. The throttle body itself is held in with 4 bolts. For this particular one, I like to use a ball head Allen, but if you're gonna use a ball Allen, make sure you use a really good quality one. If you use one that's not really good quality, you run the risk of rounding out inside of the bolt. Let's go ahead and remove the 4 bolts. Before removing the 4th one, I like to tuck my hand under the throttle body. That way, one, I can hold the throttle body when it breaks free, and I don't drop that 4th bolt. And we also have our gasket. We'll go ahead and set that to the side. Now that we have the throttle body off the car, we can do a little bit more thorough inspection on it. As we get real up close, we can see there is a good amount of dirt on the throttle plate. And if we flip it over, we can see that there's even more on the inside. All this dirt and grime in here can actually upset how much this throttle valve closes. Now, you want to make sure you're on something that will absorb this carburetor cleaner because it will leak past the throttle plate. It doesn't seal perfectly. Also, make sure you're working in a well-ventilated area. I like to start with a little bit of a pre-soak. So what I'll do is I'll turn it upside down since it's usually dirtier on the inside than the outside. Make sure you have your safety glasses on. We'll go ahead and spray some of that carburetor cleaner on the inside. Now, that's kind of step one. Next, I like to use either a scrubby pad and just cut a very small strip off. You don't need this whole piece. Or a toothbrush can work really great for this too. Either use an old one, or I got this whole pack for like $1. We can spray it again. Get our brush and gently clean the dirt away. If it's being real stingy, that's when we'll use the green scrubby pad. You don't need a lot of pressure here, just gently scrub that, and you can already see just how clean that is just with a quick little scrub. Now, getting the surface here clean is pretty important, but really the most important part is going to be cleaning right where the throttle plate closes on. So what you can do is you can push it open with your hand, hold it, give it another spray, take our brush or our scrubby pad, and clean inside here. That's the part where you really want to make sure you get all the gunk out. And of course, make sure you get the edge of the throttle plate as well. And I also like to get a rag and really wipe that out of there just to make sure you get as much dirt out as possible. Now, we're not making microchips here, so it doesn't have to be spotless, but you really do want to work to get as much of this debris out as you possibly can. We'll go ahead and do the exact same thing on the side coming into the throttle body. Now, a little trick you can use, if you open it up by hand, you can take the plastic handle of a screwdriver and just set it in there. One, that'll hold your throttle body up nice and easy like this, and it'll also hold the throttle open so that it might make it a little easier to clean. Use our toothbrush or our scrubby pad to get rid of any remaining dirt or debris. You can see this dirt along the edge here of the throttle valve. We want to make sure we clean that off. Once you feel like you got the majority of the debris out of there, go ahead and remove your screwdriver handle or whatever you use to hold it open, but don't just pull it out and let the throttle valve slam shut. Go ahead and relieve the pressure, remove it, and then just let it close nice and gentle. Notice we still got a little bit of debris on this side of the throttle plate, so let's go ahead and clean that next. We also want to make sure that the mating surface for the gasket is nice and clean as well. Sometimes bits of that gasket will actually stick to either the throttle valve or to the intake manifold. We want to make sure that's clean. It's not a bad idea before you install the throttle body, take some compressed air and just blow it out. That way if a little piece of the green scrubby got stuck or there's a small piece of dirt you missed, it'll get rid of it. When it comes to the outside, it's up to you if you want to clean it or not. That's going to be purely aesthetics. For me, I'm good with just cleaning the inside, so let's go ahead and put it back in the car. All right, now that our throttle body is clean and the two mating surfaces for our gasket is clean, let's go ahead and install the throttle body. We have our new gasket here. What I like to do is take the throttle body, set the gasket on the throttle body, put one bolt through all the way, start it by hand. And now what I'm doing is I'm using my hand and the throttle body to hold the gasket in place. We'll take another bolt, go ahead and start it as well. And now we don't have to worry about the gasket moving around on us. We can go ahead and start our other two bolts by hand. Going back together, I really don't like using power tools for this because the intake manifold is so soft. The torque spec on these bolts is only 10 Newton meters. So what I do is I just snug these bolts up, and once all four of them are snug, we'll go ahead and torque them down. Set our torque wrench to 10 Newton meters. I'm gonna switch to the flathead Allen. It's probably not necessary, but I always use a crisscross pattern when I torque these bolts down. We'll go ahead and put our intake boot back on, slide our clamp up. Now, if this clamp gives you a lot of resistance while you're trying to loosen it or tighten it, spray it with a little bit of lubricant. You don't want to force these, otherwise you really do run the risk of breaking them. And while you can replace this with a regular one, you might not have one this big laying around, and it's probably not going to stay on for a trip to the parts store. That makes it much easier to tighten. We'll go ahead and plug our throttle body back in. Do one quick check, make sure we got everything. Now you very well might be done here. There is one more step that we can do to make sure that this job is done properly, and that's readapt the throttle body. We're going to be using VCDS in order to do that. Step one is going to be going into the ECM. Then we're going to go into basic settings. In our basic setting menu, we're going to go to number 60. That's going to be our throttle body field. On some of the older VWs, you'll use 98 instead of 60. So if you have a car that's like Mark III, you'll want to use 98. Or oftentimes VCDS will actually have in the drop-down menu a selection you can just go right there. Once you go to 60, we need to activate the basic setting, which will open and close the throttle body just a little bit in order to determine the full close position. Inside the throttle body are two sensors that do read the position of the butterfly flap. When we look at it in number 62, we're going to use field 1 and field 2. Now these two sensors oppose each other, so one starts high and goes to low on full open, and the other one starts low and goes all the way to high. The value you're really looking for here is the two of those to add up to roughly 100. And as you guys know, I love VAG-COM for many reasons, but one of the big ones is it allows us to graph those numbers so we can actually see them move together. Field 3 and Field 4 are for the sensors and the pedal. The relationship between those numbers is one is half of the other. So they're going to move up in sequence, but one is always going to read half. Now, if you don't have a scan tool to do these adaptations, what you can do is simply do a key cycle. Turn the key on, let all the lights in the dash go out, and then shut the key off, and do it one more time the same way. Typically, that'll relearn the throttle body. You may also need to do a key on, and then press your foot on the gas pedal all the way to the floor so it knows its full closed position and its full open position. Now, this will vary vehicle to vehicle, so if you know the formula for adapting a throttle body on another type of car, feel free to drop that down in the comments. When you're working with a car with a throttle cable, the process is going to be almost exactly the same, but you'll need to disconnect the cable. Now on this throttle body here, there's also coolant lines that would need to be disconnected. So make sure that if you're working on a hot vehicle, you bleed the pressure off the system. Because the GTI is highly modified, we don't have the coolant lines hooked up anyway, so it's nothing we need to worry about. All right, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Questions, comments, drop them down below. Links to everything we used today will be down in the description. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.